All right, let's get right into it. Today we're looking at Tanzania, a nation that found itself right on the edge, all because a disputed election brought the entire country to a grinding halt.
So, where does this all begin? Well, it starts with this, a chilling message that popped up on phones all across the country. Imagine this. It's the night before Independence Day, December 9th, and your phone buzzes with an SMS from the government. And it says this: report anyone planning chaos tomorrow. Wow, just that simple, ominous instruction. And that right there set the stage for everything that was about to go down.
And listen, this wasn't just some empty threat sent over the airwaves. No way. This message was backed up by a very real, very overwhelming show of force. Soon, videos started popping up online showing full military convoys. And I mean, we're not talking about local police here. We're talking soldiers in full battle gear rolling into the biggest cities. The message was loud and clear. And right as the troops were rolling in, something else was happening. The digital world started to choke. Internet speeds all over the country just plummeted. For activists on the ground, this was a huge red flag. They knew exactly what it was. They call it a pre-shutdown crawl. It's like the government was slowly turning off the faucet of information, a classic move to disrupt communication before they pull the plug completely. Then, things got even darker. We started hearing about the human cost. Key opposition figures just became unreachable. Their phones went dead. Activists were reporting that their homes were surrounded. And some people, they just disappeared, their whereabouts completely unknown. You can just imagine the blanket of fear that started to spread. So, let's piece this all together. What did this look like on the ground? Well, you take all these different pieces, the text message, the military, the slow internet, the disappearances, and they add up to one thing: a nationwide lockdown. And this military presence wasn't just in one or two spots. No, it was everywhere. We're talking all the major cities. Dar es Salaam, the commercial heart of the country, Arusha, all the way to the capital, Dodoma. It was like overnight the entire country was transformed into this massive controlled zone, all before the sun even came up. But here's where it gets really interesting. The official story from the government? Oh, this is just a routine precaution, nothing to see here. But people on the street weren't buying it. They looked at the sheer scale of this operation, the timing, and they came to a very different conclusion. This didn't feel like a response to protests. It felt like they were predicting them. This was a preemptive strike designed to stop any dissent before it could even start. So the big question is, why? Why this massive, coordinated show of force? Well, to get to the bottom of that, we've got to go back a couple of months to the presidential election in October. That's the political spark that really lit this whole fire. And it really all comes down to this one number, 97.8%. That's the official victory margin the government announced for the incumbent, President Samir. I mean, just think about that. A staggering, almost unbelievable number. And you can bet it raised more than a few eyebrows, not just in Tanzania, but all over the world. So how did the opposition react? Well, they were not subtle about it. Their response was immediate and absolute. They flat out rejected the results, calling them, and this is a direct quote, mathematically impossible, politically absurd, and morally dishonest. I mean, you can't get much clearer than that. For them, this wasn't just a flawed election, it was a complete fiction.
And this really breaks down their side of the story. They insisted that the march they had planned for Independence Day was meant to be totally peaceful, just a protest against what they saw as a stolen election. Their entire narrative is about a government that's crushing dissent with brute force. They're pointing to their leaders being put under house arrest, their teams going missing, and these truly terrifying, though I have to stress unconfirmed, reports of people being killed or disappearing after the election. So what we have here is a classic case of two completely conflicting stories. It's like two different realities playing out at the same time. You have the government's version of events, and then you have the opposition's version, and they could not be further apart. And just look at how different these two stories are. The government claims the protests are illegal, that they're funded by foreigners who want to create chaos and burn things down. They say the military presence is just a routine precaution. But then you look at the opposition side. They say, no, this is a peaceful march, it's our right. They argue the state is just criminalizing dissent so they don't have to be held accountable, and that the military is there for one reason, to intimidate and silence people. You can't reconcile these two views. They're polar opposites.
Now, you can't have a standoff this big without the rest of the world starting to pay attention. And that's exactly what happened. The situation in Tanzania very quickly became a major point of concern for the international community.
And you can almost track how worried the world was getting just by looking at the warnings coming out of foreign embassies. It's like watching a storm gather.
First, the US tells its staff, hey, don't travel around the country. Then Kenya, right next door, tells its citizens to stock up on 2 weeks' worth of food and water. Think about that. And finally, Israel just says, don't go there, period. For diplomats, these aren't just suggestions. They're smoke signals that say their intelligence agencies think something really, really bad and uncontrollable could be about to happen.
So how did the Tanzanian government react to all this international pressure? Did they back down? Nope. They doubled down. President Samir went on record and blamed the whole thing on unnamed foreign hands, and even got specific, pointing a finger directly at Kenyan networks for funding the protests. But here's the kicker. No evidence was ever presented to back up that claim.
So that's the setup. You've got the country in a military lockdown. You have two sides that are dug in, absolutely refusing to budge. The whole nation is just holding its breath. It really was on a razor's edge. So the question is, what happens next?
Well, according to experts watching the situation, there were basically 3 ways this could go. 3 very different and very dangerous realities. Option 1, a mass movement. The people decide they've had enough, they break through that wall of fear and take to the streets. Option 2, a hard military lockdown. The government solidifies its control, and a new, much more authoritarian political order is cemented in place. And then there's option 3, a complete information blackout. The internet goes dark, the phones are cut, and the world is left completely guessing about what's happening inside the country.
And that really leaves us with the most critical question, doesn't it? What happens when the cameras are turned off and the internet is cut? Because in moments like these, the truth is always the first casualty. But here's the thing. History has a funny way of remembering. It records the silence, even when governments are desperately hoping nobody is listening. What happens in the dark? That's what matters most.